kind of I saw the previous sessions which were done, and a few of them were quite challenging from a technical point of view. So let me first make one thing clear, that today's session is going to be not technical at all. I mean, I was a computer science or an IT engineer at some point, and I have kind of lost my way from there quite some time back. So today we are mostly going to, talk about how I kind of started in as an IT engineer, and then how I got here and what are the kind of things which I learned along the way. And maybe if any of you, etc., are trying to do a similar path in the future, maybe you can relate to it, etc. And also, after this call or session, I can share my contact details if any one of you want to catch up, etc. later. More than happy to do so. Right. So let me first start by explaining why I have called meandering along. Because in India, when we are born or when we go to
Don't lie.
school, our path is charted out very clearly, right? You go to school, you will go to class 10, you will give your board exams. Invariably, 95% of the time, you will choose science because that seems to be the de facto thing to study. You will give your class 12 exams, and then you'll do engineering and whatever, right? That's good, but unfortunately, at that point, that's where it ends. And most of that, post that, your life goes like a meandering river, and you take twists and turns, often very slow, and that's how you keep progressing. So that's why I thought it's a good way of kind of describing what we might be talking about today. Right? So having said that, let me kind of first give a brief introduction to who I am, right? So like Shadin said, Shadin and I both went to the same college in Jadavpur. But before that, like some of you, and I am also from Calcutta. I still prefer calling it Calcutta as opposed to Kolkata. So I did my schooling from a school called St. James's, and I graduated in 2007. Right after that, like I said, as any normal or any person who does not have too much of ambitions and is just going along, I did engineering. So I went to Jadavpur University, and we studied IT. I would say we studied very less, but we learned something. After that, I kind of, I had a few jobs, but somehow I got convinced that I should give the CAT exam just to explore. And by fluke, it converted also. So then I had a choice. So I thought might as well try it out and go and do study management, right? I mean, coming from my background, in my family, almost everyone is a technical person. My father is a CS professor. My mother also is into economics, but very technical. So no one has really gone and done a management. It sounds very vague, but just to figure out what it is. So I went and did management. In 2013, I graduated. And then for 4 years, I worked with a consulting firm called KEARNEY. Okay. And then post that, I left that in 2017. And we founded this company called INXITE Out. And that's what we've been working on for the last 3 years. Right? Now, if you see there's a black box here, it's because we are mainly going to focus in the next few slides on what I did where and how the INXITE Out came about in the overall picture. Right. Also, just to, apart from this, what else do I do? From a very young age, I have been a Manchester United fan. First few years, let's say first 15 years was very good. I had a great time. Last 8 years has been quite challenging because we've been losing left, right, center. So, but I still continue to be a fan. And apart from that, I've just put a Netflix symbol, not to show I'm just a fan of Netflix, but I really like watching a lot of movies, and that's what I do. Right. So this is broadly about myself, and right. So before now, let us. I mean, I'll just quickly now jump into that in the black box itself to focus on what is KEARNEY, what was I doing there, and how I went about from there to starting a company. Right. So, because a lot of you might be in school, right, and maybe not very familiar with what is consulting. I'm sure none of you have heard about this firm called KEARNEY. It's not as ubiquitous as, let's say, Google or Microsoft or any of these firms and products which we use every day. So I thought I'll kind of give you a bit of brief to understand what is KEARNEY. I mean, I think it will also help you understand what are the different career options you might have after you leave your school and your colleges, right? So KEARNEY is a firm which was established in 1926, and it's a consulting firm, right? It's a management consulting firm. So what that meant was, consulting means you will basically take projects from companies. So let's say company X has a certain problem. Let's say they want to maybe sell more of product X, or they want to set up something, they want to reduce some of their cost, right? So they will give this project to companies like KEARNEY. There are many other companies like that, some McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, Payne, etc. And they kind of work with these businesses to help solve their problems, right? And very often, these are complex business problems, and they not only need your understanding of the business, it also needs your understanding of people, because ultimately at the end of the day, what in our entire education process, which gets missed big time, is that we are always taught formulas and technical information, right? We are never taught soft skills. We are never taught how to talk, how to work with people, how to talk and work in teams, how to talk and interact. And a lot of us, and we have seen, we learn all of this much, much later in life. Right? So this is what KEARNEY does. And what was I doing there? I was essentially, I mean, I've just given you some snapshots of projects which we were doing. So let's say, for example, we were setting up a new telecom company in Saudi Arabia, right? So we said, okay, great. Someone who had a lot of money. They said, I want to set up a telecom company. How do I go about it? What kind of products should I launch? In those days, products meant essentially how much of talk time will you give, how many SMSs, how much of data will you provide, which set of customers will I target, etc. So we kind of help them develop a roadmap to do that. And and they went about it. Something which is more closer to home is that we were working with Parley, which you might have always heard of Parley. So then they kind of wanted to make Fruity and Appy Fizz. They wanted to kind of sell more of them, right? So we were helping them with that. Something a bit different is an industrial welding company, right? So, I mean, another thing which kind of happens when you work in a company like this is you get exposure to so many different spaces that things you were never even aware of, right? So no one even thinks of industrial welding as a company, right? So those kind of things, and then something in real estate as well. So what kind of things should real estate developers be building next, and all this kind of thing, right? So nowadays, if you look at new houses which are coming up, they come with Alexa inbuilt, or they come with even simpler Wi-Fi inbuilt, things like that. So how would you be tapping into that? So this is what I was doing, and I will come to why it was relevant. Right. So why it was relevant was that I was working with some of the biggest companies in the world, right? So you can take Airtels, or you can take, let's say, Parley. These are all big companies. In parallel, what I was also kind of leading up with AI and machine learning and big data. And pardon me for not using these terms in the correct and true sense of its definition. But in business parlance, it is kind of trying to use your data to make better decisions or better predictions or automate things, right? So what I was seeing was that there are a lot of things which are happening outside, and I had set up some Google alerts, etc., just to understand what the big companies are doing. And I saw that, I mean, there are things like, let's say, understanding people's feedback about your brand. Let's say you launch a new product, right? And you can understand from Facebook and Twitter or even Amazon how customers are picking up those brands, right? What is their, what kind of commentary are they generating regarding those brands, right? Things which were earlier would take a lot of time for you to actually get into, right? Again, a lot of the forecasting inside an organization, let's say people do forecasting for cash flows, people do forecasting for sales, etc. All of these things had the potential to be automated. Customer experience, which was, let's say, your call center, etc., was still very manual. People did not understand, not really understanding the customer. There was a written script, and people just used to use that written script to go ahead and respond to the customer, right? But on the other hand, you see that these kind of new technologies are coming up, and people are talking about how beneficial it is, etc. However, I was sitting at these big companies, and what I found is that they were not really, no one was doing much at all, right? There was loads of data. The technologies were easily accessible, but no one was really kind of implementing it. And then I kind of went about and talked to a few of the CIOs, which is the IT officer or the information officer, etc. And we kind of found out that these technologies are there. Everyone is aware of it, but no one really knows how to use it or how they should go about even starting their journey because it's so new, right? And then you kind of understand that most of our understanding of AI, machine learning, big data are driven by the big technology companies, let's say Google's, Amazon's, Netflix's, etc., right? Where they have in-house technical talent, understanding, knowledge, etc. But very few of the other traditional companies, but very few of the other companies had any idea of like what and how we should go about doing any of this, right? So that's what kind of got me interested, saying, okay, I'm here, I'm talking to these people, these guys have no idea. I am understanding a bit of it. I also do not know how to do it, but maybe there is a play for it, right? So then I kind of further went a bit deeper into understanding what was holding them back, right? So some of the things which I understood, and again, this is a stock survey which I have taken, but most of the findings in this survey are very consistent with what I have seen and what other surveys have also found. Right? So I saw that there was one session which was done on machine learning and AI, where essentially, if I look at it, just to be, is running some, let's say, statistical or models to extract insights from data, just to put very, very laymanish way. However, most of the companies, we found that they did not have a lot of data, or the data was not kept in a way which made it useful. And if you look at a company like Google or Amazon, they have invested a lot of money in just storing their data properly over years. And as a result of which, today you get to see the magic of AI, which is kind of dumbfounding us over and over again, right? So, but these companies had never done that because they never thought about it. They were focusing on doing their core business and not focusing much on storing data or using AI. So that was one of the first things which we kind of identified. The second thing obviously was that, well, we've heard about it, but no one knows like how you do it, right? So we very often hear a term called data scientist nowadays. And it's a very abused term sometimes because everyone started calling them data scientists. But fundamentally, there were no data scientists. Very few data scientists, especially hoarded mostly by the big technology companies. So the other companies were having very, very less of it, right? So again, they didn't know how to proceed. And the third thing is when we are when we learn about these things, we often learn things like a recommender system or a self-driving car, right? Or even for that matter, Alexa, right? Now, these are very good use cases to sell the technology. But if you, let's say in your school or your university, right? How can you use it? Right? You self-driving car is very fancy, but it's not very relevant for your university today. Or for example, Alexa, great, it might be, but it's a very fundamental change in how you think of your university for you to think that Alexa will come and be useful, right? So does that mean that for any company, there is no play at all, right? Can the same mathematical tools and business understanding, etc., be taken to solve much simpler problems to start off with? And then as people progress along this journey, can they adopt some of the more advanced technologies, right? So for example, let us say you have let's say you have simple forms, right, which people fill each and every year. Can you automate some of the form processing, right? Especially, or can you even help in marking some of the answer scripts which people might be writing? Today they are TAs, etc. But some of these things can be potentially achieved much, much easily as opposed to, let's say, some of the things which Google, etc., were selling the world. Right? So these are some of the things which we thought which we could play in. There are other areas which were kind of challenging it. People, as you would understand, any big company or in our normal life also, we are very reluctant to change, right? If we have adopted a particular product, we think that product is the best, and we are not very easy to change, right? For example, if you think about it, today, WhatsApp, right? People are trying to shift from WhatsApp to Signal, but it's mostly being a back and forth because everyone's else friends are here and everyone is waiting for the others to go, right? No one wants to make the jump and stick to it because they're going to miss out. Same thing happens in companies in different places as well, where let's say someone says, I have been doing this for the last 50 years of my life. This is how it has been done. And this is how it will happen, right? Where AI, etc., is very new and they don't really want to pick it up. However, inside a company, we couldn't do much, but we thought, okay, let's focus on these three things which we can potentially help them with. And if you say 57% or 50+% of the challenges are people who responded, identify these as the challenges. So if we can solve some of them, maybe we can do something, right? So that's how we thought, and we thought that this is how we will progress about it. Okay, so then we said, okay, fine, we'll kind of set up a company, right? So me, my co-founders, we kind of left what we were doing, and we thought we will set up a company called INXITE Out, right? Now, if you look at the Venn diagram on the right, this is kind of where we play. So if you look at the data science in the middle is what we are focusing on really, right? So what it needs is we need an understanding of computer science.
Shaunak, just a minute. I just want to kind of break the ice. Like I think people are really silent. So let me ask one question to you, correct?
Yes,
while you were kind of talking about it. So this is like a fundamental problem, correct? So people don't want to change and there is a machine learning data-driven thing want to solve. But there can be a technical company coming up and giving a solution for that particular thing. For example, Andrew Ng has this landing AI company, correct? They are trying to attack for traditional companies. So what is the USP for a consultant like you have? Like, obviously you have technical background, but like I'm just saying, like anyone coming from Boston Consulting Group, what they can add, like if there is any new technical folk come in and just understand the field and build the thing. So where is the USP for like consultants?
Yeah, no, so basically what I would say is that if I look at a company like Boston Consulting Group, right? So their core focus is in a different domain altogether, right? So it is very difficult for them to span out and start focusing on something else. The reason why this happens is if anyone has a legacy business, consulting business, right? They are making their investments constantly in that domain, right? It's very difficult for them to start prioritizing something else all of a sudden. On paper, technically, it can certainly be done. However, they will find it tricky to be as agile as a company which is focusing, especially only in this space, right? If you think about, I mean, look at parallels in history, right? If you look at a company like Microsoft, right?
My question was a bit more fundamental, correct, than that. My question was that, like, I just want to kind of, there is a technical people, correct, who are kind of having the technical know-how, and there is a consultant people like who have this the business side of it, if I want to put it in that way, very well, correct, and they know how the business model works, what are the pain points, and they kind of figure out where to kind of like basically finding the correct nail, and they use this hammer to solve that problem. But like so I understand, like Boston Consulting Group, they will struggle. But if there is a startup, like that example I give, landing AI, correct, of Andrew Ng, so they are looking for traditional companies. So if they come, like I'm just trying to like what is the pros and cons of this, to if they come, like how what is the advantage they have and what advantage you are having the consultant knowledge.
So I'm not fully aware what landing AI is doing. Okay, but I mean, so there are two parts to the problem. One is if a company, so there are two ways in which people try to adopt AI in the organization, right? One way is to kind of build products and try to move things directly into those products. If you move into those products, basically what comes is that AI comes built into on those products. So for example, if you have a CRM solution or something like that, like a Salesforce, they have a product on top of their CRM solution called INXITE, right, which is supposed to be their AI engine. So anyone who adopts those kind of products will get the AI out of the box, right? And in certain areas where the productization has happened, that is certainly the best way to go. On the other hand, the consulting firms, what they focus on is to pick up pick up those niche areas where those productization either is not very feasible right now, or B, the companies are not very willing to adopt that product. The second place where the consulting companies do help is that very rarely would you see a company go out of the box to kind of adopt a product right away. Right? So there has to be a roadmap, etc. There's will be some small steps which you kind of take, which kind of makes the pathway for adopting the products, etc. In the long run. Having said that, it will never happen that all of your AI ventures, etc., will be productized, because there are always going to be niche use cases, etc., which a consulting firm, by consulting here we mean more of a service-based, project-based kind of structure, where there will be a play for these kind of models, where you will be leveraging some of the technologies, the core technologies being developed by the big technology companies, and then you'll be catering or modifying that or using that for the specific business case. The other place where consulting companies can do is that more often when you take a very standardized AI model, if you can build a model on top of that, cater to the specific business case, your performance is often much better than the generic model, which is coming out of the box, right? So that is where the main focus of the consulting firms are. The other important thing which the consulting firms bring today is that if you look at the challenge of AI, it is not it's a technical field, all right, but the consumer is actually a business person, right? So there is a certain play in the intersection where you have to understand the technology, but you also have to understand the business, and you have to be able to mesh the two together, which is where there is a certain degree of play. Obviously, what is an opportunity today, in 5 years timeline, it will no longer be an opportunity. And there will be mechanisms which we need to kind of pivot our business to go into different kinds of services, more advanced applications of AI models, or go into find this particular niche and go for a productization of the same. Right, so that's where the play currently lies, and it's certainly not something which you can do for the next 20 years. Maybe you can do it very successfully for the next 15 years, and then from there you can keep changing. Having said that, currently, if you look at the adoption of AI in businesses today, it is abysmally low, right? So it kind of makes it, gives ample opportunity for people to play in these domains. I think Srinjoy has a question. So before that, Shadin, does that answer? Or
yes. Yeah, Srinjoy, no, so he kind of, I think, mistakenly put up his hand. So just to everyone, like, just wanted to ice break thing. So if you have anything like just related to this or something, you can kind of directly ask or something. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so essentially, like I was saying, so we kind of decided that we will bring the entire gamut of technologies which are required for a company to successfully implement. So the computer science and IT part of it, as you would understand, most of the cases when you start, you're actually kind of figuring out what data they have and how to put that data together, right? Before you can apply anything. And the technologies they have been based, their data has been based on, is sometimes, especially if you go to banking, is sometimes 30 years old, right? Which is not what is the in thing today, right? They are still stuck in the simple SQL-based storage structures, whereas now, because of structured and unstructured data, etc., people have kind of moved on. And obviously, maths and statistics capability, and most importantly, is the domain and business knowledge, because without this, you're not able to justify or sell AI within any organization, because people do not see a lot of business value coming from it. So that's what the main objective hence was to, initially was to take the existing technologies and try to apply in organizations across the enterprise, right? So enterprises have different processes. So let's say when you buy a product, there is someone who is billing the product to you, someone who's shipping the product to you. So these are all processes. Can you find effective applications of AI in each of these processes to make it better? And help the change be fundamental, in the sense that the change should not be incremental. It should be a vast change from their existing business, etc. So it should give them big benefits, right? And to do this at scale. So this is what the focus turned out to be. And we started about with it. Obviously, as when we started, at first, we struggled quite a bit because, first of all, we had very limited experience, and we obviously limited credibility, right? So where people were not very interested in understanding what you can do when you've not done much for other people, right? So that's the first thing. Secondly, as you see, it's a amalgamation of multiple technical bases. So kind of building a team to cover all these bases was costly, and we were bootstrapping. So By bootstrapping, I mean, we were putting in our funds itself. We were not raising money. So that was one more thing. The other thing is when we try to do sales, I mean, we would go to Geneva or we would go to Madrid, etc. We would be talking to the clients. I mean, they would hear us out. They would give us meetings, etc. However, more often than not, it would not convert into business. And initially, to start off with, it was very difficult for us to be truly differentiating when we go to the customer, because there are many other, I mean, we are not the only people to see this opportunity. There were many other people who were kind of looking at this opportunity. So how do we differentiate ourselves? But because since we were in it, we kept at it for some time. In spite of, we were questioning whether our vision of what we were trying to do was even to the extent that sometimes a lot of these technologies come up, and AI and ML, artificial intelligence, it's not new. It's been there for quite some time. Every new revolution kind of pushes the thing forward, but sometimes it subsides, sometimes it picks up. So maybe what we were doing was not worth doing. So we are questioning that as well. And obviously, as you keep trying to do it, your frustration kind of increases. So you're like, you keep questioning, am I doing the right thing? Am I pitching it the right way, etc. Money starts running out, and obviously you end up having.
So there is a question.
Yes.
What are the strategies you apply to convince to buy the product to the clients? Like, how do you solve the 0 to 1 problem? Correct.
Okay. So let me talk about what was happening in the beginning and what is happening now. Right. When we first started, right, if you go with a blank slate, you're not going to get much, right? So how do you build some credibility? So one part of building the credibility is to have some people on board who have done some of these things in the past, right? So you're selling their capability as the organization's capability. Secondly, what we also did is that we partnered with a couple of organizations, and we said, we are starting out. We don't want money from you. We will just give us access to some data and let us prove it to you what we can do for you, right? Now, that seems like a very simple strategy, but it works. I mean, one, it kind of gets us into a conversation with the company. So if we can deliver some results for them. And the second thing is, obviously, once you have that, you can start showing some credibility on your plate as well, right? So whether you're selling a service or a product, there's a concept of some launch customers, right? So you will need some launch customers with whom you will not expect a lot of financial gains, but you will try to make them use your product or your service to, one is to get them on board, or to keep them as your credibility when you go to some of the other organizations, right? So that's how we did it back then. Going forward, now that we have a few other projects under our belt, now we can go a lot more based on our credibility as well, the projects which we have done. And over time, we have also understood some of the key pointers which people respond to. And LinkedIn has turned out, especially with COVID, we are unable to travel for the last 1 year. So LinkedIn has turned out to be a very effective channel for us to reach out to people and be able to talk about us. Now, as you do that, very often you will not get anything out of it, but sometimes you will be able to get the foot in the door, and from there you can build the thing. Another thing which is very common for these kind of businesses is that on a year, let's say 70 to 80% of your businesses you expect to come from your existing customers, right? So let us say you get a foot in the door for 1 year. The focus of the next year should be to increase that business, let's say from 100 to 500 or 700, sometimes even more, which will kind of build more credibility for you, more opportunities for you, etc. So this is something which is a very standard practice in any of these consulting businesses to keep building on your existing customers, because they provide you the ability to experiment, and they trust you. At the end of the day, everyone buys on trust. They like your credibility, etc. That just gets you through the door. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you kind of buy on trust. Right? So does that answer the question, whoever asked?
Yeah, he's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Fine. So after all of this, I think about we were doing some work here and there, but after almost 9 months of trying, we got our first paid project, and which was, I mean, in the larger scheme of things, it was not the most technically challenging project or the most wow thing, but at least we got something. And what we realized after that is that most of these companies were struggling with some of these easier, smaller problems. So from there, we kind of proceeded from there. And ever since that, we have not looked back. Like, I mean, this customer, we started working with them in 2018. And we are still working with them in 2021. And every year, we've kind of grown by at least 2 to 3x. On a year-on-year basis, right? So that's how, once you get in, you have to focus on building it out and selling them more and more and more things which you have in your kitty, right? Very often, you will hear things like cross-sell and upsell, which basically means if someone is buying A from you, they might also be interested in something B or C, and you should try to sell to them. So I mean, I had just kind of put in some of the different kinds of stuff which we were working on. I think we were recently worked with an oil and gas player in the USA, actually Texas. So they were fracking. So, and their machines keep on failing, and they wanted to predict whether their machines can be. You can predict at least 2 days in advance whether the machine is going to fail, and then make the necessary thing. So things like that. We've kind of worked on understanding, let's say, brand perception, right? So when someone talks about a particular brand, are they talking about it favorably? What kind of interventions a particular company can do to manage their brand perception online? Some of these kind of things. Yeah. And again, this is something, I mean, some of you are in research. So we recently actually worked with a toxicological player. So they have research papers coming up every year, and they're, like, say, hundreds and thousands of research papers which are getting generated online by different people, and they need to find out which research papers are relevant for them. Because in the toxicological space, every year new research comes out and it's approved, then they have to comply to it, right? So they need to find out, it's not an academic activity. For their regulatory clearances, they need to adhere to it. So they constantly download all these papers, and there are people who sit and identify which research papers are relevant for their specific thing. Right? So again, a text classification based model, which was kind of developed to identify which are relevant and what is not relevant, so that it kind of helps bring down this manual burden of going through each and every paper and understanding which ones they need to kind of implement. Another one, we've all been to stores like Spencer's, etc. So we built kind of an app with which, so certain products in a Spencer's and all that, they are kept in a position because there is a science to that. It's not just kept ad hoc. I mean, things which are kept at eye level, things which are kept below eye level. And these are all defined, planned, and agreed upon. And that's when the sales reps on the floor kind of go and put these products in these places, right? And now people spend money for that. So once people spend money for that, they actually also want to see that if I take a picture, based on the picture, can someone tell me that these products are not placed in the right position, right? So those kind of things are also what we worked on. So, I mean, this was some of the things we worked on. So now, just I thought we would kind of share with you some of the things which I have learned along the way. And this is also some of the things which my co-founders have also learned along the way. Some of these things could be very cliched, but that's what the thing is. Everyone does the same thing through their own experience. Right? So I thought I'll kind of share them with you. So first of all was that it is not easy. So doing whatever. So when we are trying to think of any company or any product or anything, the first thing we think is, okay, how am I going to be completely different or completely differentiated from the market? And more often than not, you will find that unless you get into it, you will never know, because people have been doing similar things for the last 10, 15, 20 years. They have a lifetime of experience before you, right? So you first need to get into it, and a lot of the differentiation and your USP starts getting evolved over time as you build experience in the space. It will take time, right? But one of the most important things is to have fun. I mean, one of the things is that, for example, I was 27, so I didn't have a lot of let's say, I mean, a lot of obligations per se. So you can have a lot of fun and try different things. The other thing is ideas. We often think that, do you have the killer idea, right? More often than not, you will find that ideas actually are ample, but execution is the key, which most people don't focus on a lot, right? I mean, if you think about Amazon, and if you, I don't know if people have read about the history of Amazon, etc. There are tons of e-commerce companies trying to sell at the time Amazon started. They were not the only company, but they are the only big company in the e-commerce space, which has been there till date, is because they have been able to execute better than anyone else, right? So execution is more often than not more important than the idea which you have when you start with it. The other thing is patience is very important. Things take time. Nowadays, if you track the Indian startup space, you will constantly get bombarded by big dollar figures in billions of people getting funded. And sometimes it can be like, okay, everyone's getting money. Why am I not getting money? Everyone's becoming incredibly successful. Why am I not? We often do not look at the amount of time they have spent, let's say 5-10 years before. And I mean, I can talk about a company called Swiggy. I think most of you have used or etc. because they are run by a few of my seniors from college, right? So Swiggy is very successful today, but it's not their first company. They failed with their first company, they shut it down, and then over time, they have become successful. There are many other companies which did not, right? But what if you have to be successful? It will take time. The other thing is, a lot of us, which I feel is that when we've gone through college, etc., or we are doing it, we are all very often overachievers, right? So we always think success will come to us because we've gone to college X, Y, etc. But when you step out, no one really cares about it. Right? So you don't treat success as your birthright. Yeah. Most importantly is make sure you fail. I mean, failures feel bad, but they kind of help you take the edge off the string of failures will come your way. The first time you'll find it very difficult to get up and work after that, but over time you kind of start learning from it. Pursue your vision, but be flexible. So pivot. One important thing which companies often talk about, startups, is pivoting, which means that you have started doing business or implementing your vision one way, but you might find roadblocks and it might not work. But that doesn't mean you shut it down. There might be a different way of doing the same thing or different way of achieving the same thing. So you kind of change your model to be able to achieve that. Right? So that is, but you should be steadfast on your vision and try to achieve that vision. In the beginning, it will not seem possible to achieve it, or it will seem extremely difficult, but you have to keep at it. And with time, when you have a small co-founding team and you start growing, you need to trust people, and you need to get good people in your team and start building a team. And you just trusting them to start helping you in doing a lot of the things. It becomes a challenge sometimes because when it's your company, you feel very attached to it. And sometimes it becomes very difficult to give the reins of it to someone else. But ultimately, you have to kind of go with that. So this is, these are some of the things which I thought I would share, because this is what I learned from it, more than all the different kinds of use cases, different kinds of technologies. I just know most of these technologies by name, not very much in the depth of it. But these are the most important things or key takeaways from me. Even if INXITE grows, becomes a big company, it does not. These are things which I will take with me going forward as well. Right? So, and anyone, whichever way, whichever thing, I mean, it's not only in the entrepreneurship, anything we do, a lot of these things are very relevant for us. But having said that, we are just about starting up, right? We are only about a 30-member team now, but we are, even with coronavirus, we've doubled in size last year, and we are aiming to kind of achieve 3 to 4x, and we're trying to build more and more. So I personally am looking to focus on a lot more things. Like I said, you have to be a constant learner, and where Shadin mentioned in the beginning that we know a lot, we actually don't know anything. We know very, very little, and being in that state is actually the best state to be in, because then you can learn a lot and try to innovate, scale faster, sell better, productization of some of your services, and even fundraising. It's a very important part of a company's process. Again, without money, you cannot do much, right? You can only put in that much money yourself, and then beyond that, you have to learn. So net, what it comes down to be is that you have a particular USP offering to your customer. Very good, people like it, but in the back end, there are 20 different things which we need to work on to enable that value proposition to be delivered to the customer. More often than not, if you fail in these 20 things, you will not be able to deliver that USP or value to the customer, even though that might be very, very lucrative for your customers. Having said that, I just wanted to kind of stop here. This is all I had to share. So if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to take them up. Shadin, over to you.
Okay, anyone have any questions? So I like, if people are thinking, let me ask you one thing. So you, after like completing your MBA, like you spent like 3-4 years in KEARNEY, correct?
Yes.
Then why did you kind of decide to leave and like start this? Like, are you always thinking to have your own startup, or like having a like your own startup is important, or like solving problem important? Like, what is the key thing to like drive you to do this?
Okay, I mean, one is obviously, one is I wanted to kind of do something by myself, and this is something which I had from the beginning. It's just that I was looking for an opportunity, not that I would have essentially wanted to do this or anything else, but in the long run, I wanted to at least try once something of my own, because when you learn or see about some of these things which people are doing, you also want to try it out and see what are the ins and outs of running a business, right? At the end of the day, it's MBAs, Masters in Business Administration, and very often we don't really do an end-to-end running of the business, right? So that's one motivation. The second part of it was that when I was working in KEARNEY, I could see that there was a particular potential, and that potential will reduce every year because a lot of companies will get more, they will get more used to using, etc. And that's what I thought was a good amalgamation of my consulting knowledge as well as some prior technical knowledge for me to be able to tap that opportunity. Hence, that was the focus area. And that's, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, one day I just decided to do it, right? There's a lot of hesitation always because companies are paying you shitloads of money. So you don't want to lose your money also, but at some point you have to let it go, right? So that was the motivation, more or less.
And like, how do you kind of keep it going? Like, it's because some of the time it will be like really nothing happening for months and months, correct? How, and it's not just you, because I think many people are depending on you, correct? You are paying their
Yes.
paychecks. So how do you kind of keep on doing that?
No, so initially what happens is that the first few projects you try to do it yourself, right? So you don't take much money. You try to do it yourself so that, and as soon as money starts flowing in, you can utilize that money to get people. So now as we have a 30-member team, right, we also have some cash reserves which we have built over time. But when you want to go to a fundamental, let's say from 30 to 300 people, right? It's not organically. Let's say if you try to do it with our own money, it's going to take a lot of time. That's when you start tapping the fundraising from VCs or even the debt markets to kind of raise money. And yeah, so that's what.
Uh,
That's a
yeah.
one advantage of a consulting company as opposed to a product company is product, unless you have a MVP, you get no money, or someone willing to invest in you, you get no money. In consulting companies, if you can get a project in the very first day, you can get some cash flow. It might not cover all your costs, but you get something. So that's one advantage of consulting.
Okay.
Yes.
So there is one question on the chat. You can directly read. You can see it on the chat.
Yes. Okay, so the question from Shubham. So I would say, okay, if you can you, it depends completely on your current experience. If you are you in school?
Yes.
Okay, you're in school. So if you're in school and if you want to do an MBA, right, you should focus on doing a full-time MBA from a school, right? Online MBA courses are mostly good and relevant for people who are doing something else and they just want to kind of add more, let's say, diversify their uh, profile with an MBA. If you really want to do an MBA, it's better to kind of go to a MBA school for it. There are two reasons for it. One is a full-time MBA degree from from a school has more value, and secondly, a lot of the things from school, which will not only from your undergrad school as well as your postgrad school, you get to meet a lot of people. And if you can get to a good school, then those people can actually, in the long run, can help you grow a lot more. By growing, I mean not only as your organization, but even personally. You get to learn a lot more. You get to meet different kind of people, and different people will end up doing different things, and you can end up sharing and knowing and learning, which is actually one of the key drivers to your professional success in life, right? So going to an MBA school or any other school, which is a full-time school, that which we loosely call networking, it helps you a lot more. And the third thing in India, at least, which is very important, is if you go to an MBA school, you can get a job very easily because of the concept of campusing. So that way also it's easier. If you do an online course, based on that, you have to go and search for your job by yourself, which is more of the American system. But in India, it is possible to get a job sitting in your campus. So why not use that as well? But again, if you do an MBA, you should do an MBA if you're really focused on doing business administration, things like marketing, finance, or simple strategy or operations. Otherwise, if you want to do a technical job, let's say a coder, very often there's not much use for doing an MBA.
Can I ask one more question here?
Yes.
Why being a coder, I'm pursuing computer science. I hope that I can pursue it later. So being in that, like, I want to be in that career. So while doing that, isn't MBA a good job? I mean,
I
a
mean,
good
so
degree to have.
okay. So what you would see is that if you look at people who get into technology in the very beginning, if you work in a company, in the very beginning, you don't do an MBA, right? It's only later when some people get to a managerial position, and to get to a senior managerial position, they do MBAs, etc. But in a very beginning, for a computer science job, you kind of need to be very good at your technical capability. MBA cannot help with that. If you're very good with your technical capability and you're a proven technical leader, only post that does adding an MBA might add some fillip to your capability as an individual, as a business individual within the organization. But before that, with a computer science degree and a computer science job, it will not add much value to your computer science career in the beginning. But again, for knowledge purposes, you can do it, but it will not help you as a career per se in the very beginning.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dada.
Thank you. Okay, I think Srinjoy. Yeah, so what do I enjoy most or least about my work of field? So what do I enjoy the most is, I think, not to the work of field. The most is I enjoy about the current work is that there is no one I can look up to and say, what should I do next, right? It is whatever comes your way, you only have to figure it out. You can talk to people and you can talk to people, get knowledge from them, but ultimately you have to be the decision maker, right? So that is the most exciting part of the job, apart from learning new things every day, right? So that's one thing. The least favorite part of the job is, let us say, if I were in an organization and I wanted to be a product manager, I could be just that, right? I did not need to think about running the HR of my organization or finance or recruitment, etc. Here, I have to think holistically of the entire thing. And some of these are very administration related, which might not be very interesting, right? So that's two parts of the same coin, which are good and bad. So, yeah. Okay, Swarnadeep. Okay, so the question is, how can I start a business with 0% of investment and get profit for it? In this case, if the investors will invest in it, then how can we get the profit or the share of the profit? Okay, so you can very often, it's very difficult to start a business with absolutely zero investment, right? It is very unlikely. What you can get, you can certainly have very less investment and get profit from it. It is certainly possible. So for example, let us say that, and I'll tell you a business which I know a friend does. So my friend is a designer, right? The investment they have done is that they have created a company. So it needs some money to set up a company. They have created some Instagram profiles to showcase their work. And then they have started talking to different companies on Instagram, right? And then they have been able to source some business from there. So they did some minimal investment in money. There was a lot of investment in terms of time. Something which we should also count is that whenever you put in time, there is a lot of opportunity cost, meaning if you are that 1 hour you're spending in this business, you could have spent it somewhere else to earn something, right? So that is also an investment, which is not a monetary investment right away. So, and then after that, once they started getting projects from it, they started making money out of it. They got profit from it also. But what you want to invest and the profit you will get completely depends on your business, which you need to do. If you want to be in a manufacturing business, there's certainly no way for you to do it without any investment. And if you're an investor coming on board, more often than not, they will not be interested only in the profit. They will be interested in your equity. Okay, so by equity, let's say you have a company. Let us say you're the only owner of the company. So you own 100% of the company. Okay, it is yours. But when an investor, let's say, gives you 5 lakh rupees, they might say that from going in the future, you are 50% owner and I am 50% owner. And every company has a value, right? So let us say if some company is making money, right, that money they will make in the future as well. So if I want to sell it to someone else, they will not only get the profit today, but also profit in the future. So they are having a certain value. So your valuation kind of depends on that. So if you look at, I don't know whether you're familiar with the stock market, you will see shares of companies getting exchanged, people buy and sell. So whenever you are buying a share, you're actually becoming a owner of that company. However, it might be a very small percentage ownership. So when an investor comes on board, they will more often than not be interested in the equity or the percentage of the company they're going to hold and what is the value of the company, and not really that interested in just the immediate profits. Right? So that's broadly, very high level, is how you kind of why an investor invests in a firm. And an investor is never interested in just the profit which you will make today. If they're giving you some money, they will expect you to do 10 different things, which will take your profits today from X to maybe 10X. That is only when the investor kind of finds value in this business. Okay. Okay, Pranshu, just to answer your question. So it is obviously worth taking a risk. If you do not, then no one would ever start a company and you would have nothing. So it is start taking a risk. Whether your product has potential to be successful or not, again, the first thing is, one is when you have a product idea, you can discuss with a few people who are in that domain to understand what they need. Actually, if you go to YouTube, there are certain video tutorials you can look at, is how do you build a product without knowing what needs to be built, right? So people, what they do is they go and talk to different companies, understand their pain points and their problems, and then try to develop a product around that, right? So one is understanding whether that product which you're doing solves some problem, whether it can be very small, right? It has to solve some problem. Whether it has the potential to be successful or not. If it solves some good problem, the good chances are it will be successful. Now, depends on what you define success. If you can sell your product to 100 people, is it successful? If you can sell to 10,000 people, is it successful or not? That's one thing. The other thing when you build a product is it's very important to think of your business model, right? So why would someone pay you money? You're solving problem X. Okay. How would someone pay you money? Will they pay you upfront? Will they pay you monthly? Are you providing a value on a month-on-month basis for them to pay you monthly? Right? So all of these different things, and the way to increase chances of success is to work very closely with your potential customers in trying to define a product. Because otherwise, very high chances that you will go wrong while you're trying to define a product, or you will not be able to solve their particular problem. And the best methodology to build is make small iterations, build something, test it, again build something, test, etc., so that you're not investing a lot of money in building something upfront without having seen any benefit coming out of it. And so that's how you would kind of try to build a product. Okay. Any other questions?
I think, is there any other questions or otherwise? Okay, there is one. No, there is nothing. So I guess